The wind howled across the barren plains of Wyoming Territory, carrying with it the taste of dust and desperation. It was the autumn of 1876, and the land stretched endlessly beneath a pale, merciless sky. Mountains loomed in the distance like sleeping giants, their peaks already dusted with early snow. The river that once ran full through the valley had dwindled to a muddy trickle, leaving cracked earth in its wake. Sarah McKenna pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, one hand clutching her daughter's small fingers. 6-year-old Emma trudged beside her, her little boots raising small clouds of dust with each weary step. They had been walking for 3 days since the stagecoach dropped them at the last town, following directions from a merchant who said there might be work at the Hartley Ranch.
"Mama, I'm tired,"
Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. Sarah bent down, brushing a strand of dark hair from her daughter's face.
"I know. Sweet pea."
Just a little farther. See that smoke rising there? That's where we're going. The ranch appeared like a mirage through the heat shimmer, a sprawling collection of weathered buildings dominated by a 2-story house that had seen better days. Fences ran in long lines across the property, containing what looked like a modest herd of cattle. It wasn't the largest ranch Sarah had seen in her travels, but it had an air of stubborn persistence about it, as if it refused to yield to the harsh land. As they approached the main gate, Sarah noticed the details that spoke of neglect: paint peeling from the barn, a broken window stuffed with cloth, weeds growing tall around the water trough. Yet the fences were sturdy, the cattle healthy, and smoke rose steadily from the chimney. Someone cared for this place, but perhaps only for its survival, not its beauty. Sarah's knock on the heavy wooden door echoed hollowly. She waited, knocked again, then heard the slow thud of boots on floorboards. The door swung open to reveal a man who seemed carved from the very mountains that surrounded them. Cole Hartley stood well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders filling the doorframe. His face was weathered like old leather, with deep lines etched by sun and sorrow. Dark hair, streaked with premature gray, hung past his collar, but it was his eyes that caught Sarah's attention, gray as winter storms and just as cold. He looked at them without speaking, his expression neither welcoming nor hostile, merely waiting.
"Mr. Hartley?"
Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt.
"I'm Sarah McKenna. This is my daughter Emma. We heard in town you might need help around the ranch."
His gaze moved from her to the child, lingering for a moment on Emma's tired face before returning to Sarah. "I didn't advertise for help." "No, sir, but Mrs. Patterson at the general store said you'd been alone out here since—" Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Since last winter. I can cook, clean, mend. I'm not afraid of hard work. I manage fine on my own." Sarah felt her hope slipping away like water through her fingers. She'd used the last of her money for the stagecoach fare. There was nowhere else to go.
"Please, Mr.
Hartley, we don't need much. Just a roof over our heads and fair wages. You wouldn't even know we're here except for the meals being hot and the house being clean." Cole studied her for a long moment, taking in the patched dress, the worn shoes, the determined set of her jaw despite the desperation in her eyes. He'd seen plenty of drifters since the war ended, but something about this woman and her child standing in his doorway stirred something he'd thought long buried. "Where's your husband?" Sarah lifted her chin slightly. "Dead, 2 years now. Cholera took him in Kansas." The wind gusted, bringing with it the scent of coming rain. Emma pressed closer to her mother's skirts, and Cole noticed how the child shivered despite trying to hide it. That small act of bravery from one so young made him look away. "I suppose the place could use some tending," he said gruffly. "There's a room off the kitchen you can use. 50 cents a day plus board. You cook 3 meals, keep the house, tend the vegetable garden if you can revive it. Laundry once a week, that's all." Relief flooded Sarah's face. "Thank you, Mr. Hartley. You won't regret this. We'll see about that. Come in before the child catches her death." The inside of the house confirmed Sarah's suspicions. While structurally sound, It bore the unmistakable marks of a place where someone existed rather than lived. Dust coated the furniture. Dishes were stacked haphazardly in the kitchen, and the windows were so dirty they barely let in light. But the bones of the house were good. Solid wood floors, a large stone fireplace, rooms that spoke of better times when laughter might have filled them. Cole showed them to their room, small but adequate, with a narrow bed and a chest of drawers. A window looked out over the plains toward the mountains. There's a pump out back for water, firewood stacked by the kitchen door. I take my meals at 6, noon and 6. Don't need conversation with them. He turned to go, then paused. What's the girl's name? Emma, Sarah said softly. Cole nodded once and left them alone, that first night, as Sarah tucked Emma into their bed. The child's eyes were already growing heavy. The room was warmer than anywhere they'd slept in weeks, and the promise of regular meals tomorrow made Sarah's own tension ease slightly. Mama, Emma murmured. Is the tall man sad? Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. What makes you think that, sweet pea? His eyes look like yours did after Papa went to heaven. Sarah's throat tightened. Sometimes her daughter saw too much. Maybe he is sad, but that's not for us to worry about. We're here to work, that's all. She kissed Emma's forehead gently, the same tender gesture she'd performed every night since her daughter was born. A mother's blessing against the darkness. It was such a simple thing. That kiss, a momentary touch of love in a hard world. What Sarah didn't know was that Cole Hartley stood in the hallway just beyond their door, having returned to bring them extra blankets. Through the gap beneath the door, lamplight spilled into the darkness, and he could hear Sarah's soft humming as she settled her daughter to sleep. The melody was hauntingly familiar, something his Margaret used to sing. He stood frozen, watching that strip of light, listening to the gentle sounds of a mother's love. How long had it been since such sounds filled this house? Since a woman's care had softened its edges? Since a child's presence had brought innocence to these rooms? The humming stopped, and he heard Sarah's whispered words. Sleep tight, my angel. Tomorrow will be better. I promise. Cole retreated silently to his study, setting the blankets aside. He poured himself a measure of whiskey, but didn't drink it, instead staring at the amber liquid as if it held answers. Outside, the wind had picked up again, rattling the windows and moaning through the eaves. But inside, for the first time in 2 years, the house didn't feel quite so empty. He thought of Sarah McKenna's determined face, the protective way she'd kept her hand on her daughter's shoulder. He thought of the child's wide eyes taking in everything, too wise for her years but still innocent somehow. Most of all, he thought of that kiss on the forehead, that simple gesture of love that had pierced through his carefully constructed walls like an arrow finding its mark. She only wanted a job cleaning his ranch. That's what she'd said, just work, nothing more. But as Cole sat in his study, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of other people in his house, he wondered if either of them truly understood what had just begun. The lonely rancher had watched her kiss her daughter, and in that moment, something sleeping inside him had stirred to life. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, bringing the promise of life to the thirsty land. And in the small room off the kitchen, Sarah McKenna held her daughter close, allowing herself to hope that they had finally found a place to rest. The first morning dawned gray and cold, with frost clinging to the window panes. Sarah rose before the sun, moving quietly so as not to wake Emma. The kitchen was a disaster, dishes crusted with old food, surfaces thick with grease, a stove that hadn't seen proper cleaning in months. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work. By the time Cole emerged from his room, the kitchen was transformed. The stove gleamed black. Dishes sat clean and organized on the shelves, and the aroma of fresh coffee and frying bacon filled the air. He stopped in the doorway, momentarily disoriented by the change. "Morning, Mr. Hartley," Sarah said without turning from the stove. "Breakfast will be ready in 5 minutes." He grunted acknowledgement and sat at the table, which she'd already scrubbed clean and set with a proper place setting. When she placed the plate before him, eggs, bacon, biscuits with gravy, and preserved peaches she'd found in the pantry. He stared at it for a long moment. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No." He picked up his fork. "Just been a while since I've seen a meal that didn't come from a can." Over the following days, they established an uneasy rhythm. Cole laid down rules like fence posts, each one creating distance. Don't enter his study. Don't touch the closed door at the end of the upstairs hall. Don't ask personal questions. Meals were to be left on the table. He'd eat alone. Keep the child quiet and out of his way. Sarah accepted each decree with a simple, "Yes, Mr. Hartley," and went about her work. The house began its slow transformation under her hands. Windows sparkled, floors shone. Curtains long gray with dust became white again. She attacked years of neglect with a determination born of gratitude and necessity. But the work was brutal. Her hands, already rough from years of hardship, cracked and bled from the lye soap. Her back ached from scrubbing floors. At night, she'd collapse into bed beside Emma, too tired even for prayers. Yet each morning, she rose again, driven by the knowledge that this job was their lifeline. One evening, 2 weeks into their arrangement, Cole returned from checking the cattle to find Sarah struggling with a heavy bucket of water from the pump. Without thinking, he took it from her hands. "I can manage," she protested. "No doubt, but there's no sense in you breaking your back when I'm standing right here." He carried the bucket inside, noting how she flexed her reddened hands. "There's salve in the pantry, top shelf. Margaret used to—" He stopped abruptly. "Margaret was your wife?" Sarah asked gently. His jaw tightened. Rule number 4, Mrs. McKenna. That night, she found the salve exactly where he'd said. It smelled of lavender and honey, clearly homemade with care, as she rubbed it into her damaged hands. She wondered about the woman who'd made it, who'd filled this house with life before leaving it so empty. The breakthrough came, unexpectedly, through Emma. The child had been obediently quiet, spending her days playing with corn-husk dolls Sarah had made or helping with simple chores. But children have a way of wearing down walls simply by being themselves. One afternoon, Cole found Emma in the barn, standing mesmerized before his horse, a black gelding named Thunder. She was reaching out one small hand, not quite touching the animal's nose. "Get away from there," he said sharply. "That horse isn't gentle." Emma jumped but didn't run. Instead, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. "He's lonely, like you." Cole felt something twist in his chest. "Horses don't get lonely." "Sure they do. My papa told me. He said horses are herd animals, need company." She tilted her head. "Do you need company, Mr. Hartley?" Before he could form a response, Thunder lowered his head and gently nuzzled the child's outstretched hand. The horse that hadn't let anyone but Cole near him in 2 years was accepting touches from a 6-year-old girl. "Well, I'll be damned," Cole muttered. "Mama says that's a bad word," Emma informed him solemnly, despite himself. Cole felt his mouth twitch. "Your mama's right. Don't repeat it." From that day, a subtle shift occurred. Cole still ate alone, still maintained his distance. But sometimes Sarah would find him teaching Emma about the ranch, showing her how to scatter feed for the chickens, explaining why they moved the cattle to different pastures, letting her watch from a safe distance as he worked with the horses. One evening, a month into their arrangement, a violent thunderstorm rolled across the plains. Rain hammered the roof, and lightning split the sky. Sarah was darning socks by lamplight when she heard it, the sound of a child crying. But it wasn't Emma. She found Cole in his study, a half-empty bottle before him, his shoulders shaking. He looked up when she entered, his eyes red-rimmed and lost. "Get out," he said, but there was no force behind it. Instead, Sarah quietly made coffee. She set a cup before him and sat across the desk. They stayed like that in silence while the storm raged outside. Finally, he spoke. 2 years ago today. Fever took her. There was nothing I could do, nothing the doctor could do. She just burned up and left me here." "Tell me about her," Sarah said softly. And he did. Words poured out like water through a broken dam. Margaret with her laugh like silver bells. Margaret who could gentle any horse and grow roses in this unforgiving soil. Margaret who'd wanted children but never got the chance. By the time the storm passed, Cole had talked himself sober, and Sarah understood the depth of the void in this house. "I'm sorry," she said when he finally fell silent. "No one should have to bear that alone." "I chose to be alone," he replied roughly. "It's easier." "Is it?" He had no answer for that. The next morning, Cole found breakfast waiting as usual, but beside his plate sat a small vase with a single wildflower, a prairie rose Sarah must have found growing near the river. He stared at it for a long time before sitting down to eat. That evening, for the first time, he called them to join him for dinner. Emma chattered excitedly about finding a bird's nest, while Sarah tried unsuccessfully to quiet her. But Cole simply listened, occasionally asking a question that sent Emma into new raptures of description. As Sarah cleared the dishes, she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. McKenna." "You're welcome, Mr. Hartley." Later, tucking Emma into bed, the child asked, "Is Mr. Hartley still sad, Mama?" Sarah considered the question. "I think he is. Sweet pea, but maybe not quite as sad as before." "Good. I like it when he almost smiles. His face doesn't look so much like stone then." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, that nightly ritual of love and protection. She didn't know that Cole stood once again in the hallway, drawn by the sounds of bedtime. This time, he held the extra blankets he'd meant to deliver weeks ago. When Sarah emerged from the room, she nearly collided with him. They stood face to face in the dim hallway, closer than they'd ever been. She could smell leather and soap, see the silver threads in his dark hair. "I thought you might need these," he said, offering the blankets. "Nights are getting colder." Their hands touched as she took them, and neither pulled away immediately. In that moment, something passed between them. Not quite understanding, not yet trust, but perhaps the possibility of both. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and turned away, then paused. "Your daughter, she's a good child. You've done well with her." Before Sarah could respond, he was gone, his door closing firmly behind him. She stood in the hallway, holding the blankets, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with wool. Outside, autumn was deepening into winter. Soon the snows would come, sealing them together in this house on the plains. Sarah wondered what those long months might bring, whether the walls Cole had built could withstand a child's innocent affection and a woman's quiet care. In his room, Cole sat on the edge of his bed, Margaret's picture in his hands. For the first time in 2 years, her face didn't bring only pain. He set the picture back on the nightstand and prepared for bed, trying not to think about brown eyes that held compassion without pity, small hands that gentled his horse, or the way a simple flower on his breakfast table had made the whole day seem brighter. The trip to Cedar Falls came on a crisp November morning. Cole needed supplies for winter, and Sarah required fabric to patch their clothing. It was Emma's first visit to town since their arrival at the ranch, and her excitement filled the wagon as they bumped along the rutted road. "Will there be a candy store, Mama?" Emma asked for the third time, bouncing on the seat between them. "We'll see, Sweet Pea. But remember, we're here for necessities, not treats." Cole surprised them both by saying, "1 penny's worth of candy never bankrupted anyone." Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning, and Sarah felt a dangerous warmth bloom in her chest. These small kindnesses from Cole were becoming more frequent, each one chipping away at her determination to keep her heart safely locked away. Cedar Falls sprawled along the railroad tracks, a collection of wooden buildings trying desperately to call itself a town. The main street was muddy from recent rain, and horses stood patient at hitching posts while their owners conducted business. Cole pulled the wagon up to Patterson's general store. "I'll load supplies," he said. "You get what you need inside." Sarah helped Emma down. smoothing the child's best dress, which wasn't much better than her everyday one, but clean and carefully mended. They entered the store to the tinkling of a bell, and immediately Sarah felt the shift in atmosphere. Conversations halted. Women who'd been examining fabric turned to stare. Mrs. Patterson, behind the counter, fixed them with a look that could have curdled milk. "Well," said a woman Sarah recognized as Mrs. Thornton, the banker's wife. "So you're the widow who's living out at the Hartley place. I work for Mr. Hartley." "Yes," Sarah replied evenly, guiding Emma toward the fabric section. "Work, Mrs." Thornton exchanged meaningful looks with her companion. "That's one word for it, I suppose." Sarah's cheeks burned, but she kept her voice steady. "I keep house and cook, that's all." "Of course you do, dear." The condescension dripped like honey, though one wonders what kind of mother takes her child to live alone with a man who's not family. "People talk, you know." "People always do," Sarah said quietly, "whether there's cause or not." She selected the cheapest fabric that would serve their needs, trying to ignore the whispers that followed them through the store. Emma, sensing the hostility, pressed close to her mother's skirts. At the counter, Mrs. Patterson tallied their purchases with obvious reluctance. "That'll be $2.30. Sarah counted out the money carefully, aware of every eye upon her. As they turned to leave, Mrs. Thornton delivered her parting shot. "You know, there are establishments in Denver that cater to women of your circumstances. Might be more suitable than corrupting a decent man's home." Sarah stopped, her hand tightening on Emma's shoulder. Before she could respond, the door burst open and Cole filled the doorway. His presence seemed to suck the air from the room. "Mrs. McKenna," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Is there a problem here?" "No, Mr. Hartley. We were just leaving." His gaze swept the store, lingering on each woman in turn. "Good, because I'd hate to think anyone in this town was disrespecting my employees." He stepped aside to let them pass, then turned back to the room. "Mrs. Thornton, you might remind your husband that his bank holds the note on the Decker farm, the same farm that borders my land I've been thinking of buying if the price is right, or wrong, depending on how I'm feeling." The banker's wife paled. "I'm sure there's no need for threats." "Mr. Hartley? Threat?" Cole's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I'm just having a friendly conversation, the same kind you were having with Mrs. McKenna." He touched his hat brim mockingly and followed Sarah outside. She stood by the wagon. Emma clutched against her, trying to compose herself. Her hands shook as she lifted Emma into the seat. "Thank you," she said quietly as Cole climbed up beside them. "But you didn't need to do that. I'm used to such talk. That doesn't make it right." He snapped the reins harder than necessary, and the horses jumped forward. Bunch of dried-up harpies with nothing better to do than spread poison. They rode in silence for a while, the town falling away behind them. Finally, Emma piped up, "Mr. Hartley? What's a harpy? Despite everything?" Sarah found herself fighting a smile as Cole struggled to answer. It's a mean lady from the old stories. Like a witch, but with... Never mind. Your mama will explain it better. Are those ladies witches?" "Emma," Sarah admonished. But Cole actually chuckled, a rusty sound, as if he'd forgotten how. "No, little one. Just people who've forgotten their manners." As they neared the ranch, Cole suddenly turned the wagon down a side trail. "One more stop," he said gruffly. They pulled up at a small cemetery enclosed by a wrought iron fence. Sarah understood immediately and kept Emma occupied in the wagon while Cole disappeared among the headstones. He returned after 10 minutes, his face unreadable. "Margaret loved this time of year," he said unexpectedly. "When the cottonwoods turned gold, said it was like God was showing off." Sarah waited, sensing he needed to talk. "She would have liked you," he continued. "Would have scolded me for letting those biddies talk to you that way. She never could abide meanness." He glanced at Emma. "Would have loved having a child around the place, too."
She sounds like a wonderful woman. She was. He gathered the reins. Too good for this hard country. Too good for me. I don't believe that, Sarah said softly. She chose you. She chose this life with you. That says something about both of you. Cole looked at her then. Really looked at her. And Sarah felt exposed under that gray gaze. You don't know what you're talking about. I know about choosing, she said. I know about loving someone enough to follow them anywhere. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the stone. But before he could respond, Emma tugged on his sleeve. Mr. Hartley, you forgot about the candy. The moment broke. Cole cleared his throat. So I did. Next time, little one. I promise. That evening, as Sarah served dinner, she found a small paper bag beside her plate. Inside were peppermint sticks. Not 1 penny's worth, but at least 5. Emma squealed with delight, and even Cole smiled at her joy. Later, after Emma was asleep, Sarah found Cole on the porch despite the cold, staring out at the darkening plains. Thank you, she said, for the candy, for today. He didn't turn. They had no right to speak to you that way. It's nothing new. A widow with a child, working in a man's home. People make assumptions. Damn their assumptions! The vehemence in his voice surprised them both. You're a decent woman doing honest work. Anyone who says otherwise will answer to me. Sarah wrapped her shawl tighter, studying his profile in the dying light. Why do you care what they say about me? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so softly she almost missed it. Because you don't deserve their scorn. Because you've brought something back to this place I thought was gone forever. Because... He stopped, shaking his head. Go inside. Sarah, it's getting cold. It was the first time he'd used her given name. The sound of it in his deep voice sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with her shawl. What about you? I'll be in soon. She left him to his thoughts, but paused in the doorway. Cole? He turned at his name. She was lucky to have you. Don't let anyone tell you different. She went inside before he could respond, her heart hammering. Behind her, Cole stood alone on the porch, wondering when exactly this woman and her child had become more than just employees. When had protecting them become as natural as breathing? And what was he going to do about the feelings stirring in a heart he'd thought dead and buried with his wife? In town, Mrs. Thornton and her circle were already spreading their poison, but Cole Hartley's warning had teeth. The banker would hear about it over dinner, and by morning, the worst of the gossip would be muted. But small towns have long memories, and narrow minds feed on the slightest deviation from propriety. As Sarah tucked Emma into bed that night, kissing her forehead with infinite tenderness, she tried not to think about gray eyes that had flashed with protective anger, or strong hands gentle with her daughter. She was here to work, to survive, to give Emma a chance at a better life. Anything else was a dangerous dream she couldn't afford. But dreams, like feelings, don't always listen to wisdom, and winter was coming to the ranch, bringing with it long nights and close quarters, where dangerous dreams might find room to grow. The drought began in earnest after Christmas. What little snow had fallen disappeared quickly, leaving the ground hard as iron. By February, the river had shrunk to a trickle barely wider than a man could jump. The grass turned brittle and brown, crunching underfoot like broken glass. Cole stood at the fence line, watching his cattle bunch around the remaining water holes. Their ribs were beginning to show despite the hay he'd stored. At this rate, he'd be lucky to keep half the herd alive until spring. How bad is it? Sarah had approached quietly, a cup of coffee in her hands. He accepted it gratefully, warming his fingers on the tin cup. Bad enough. If we don't get water soon, I'll have to sell off most of the herd at a loss. Maybe all of it. What about digging a new well? Ground's too hard, water table's too low. It'd take a miracle to hit water now. He drained the coffee, bitterness matching his mood. Might be time you and Emma started looking for work elsewhere.
I won't be able to pay wages much longer. We're not leaving. The firmness in her voice made him look at her. We've weathered hard times before. We'll weather this too.
This isn't your fight, Sarah, isn't it? She met his gaze steadily. Emma and I have a home here. That makes it our fight too. That night, Sarah took inventory of their resources. The root cellar still held potatoes, turnips, and preserved goods she'd put up in the fall. They had flour, beans, salt pork. If she was careful, she could stretch it for months. She'd made do with less. The real challenge was water. Every drop had to be hauled from the failing river, and what livestock remained needed most of it. She implemented strict rationing, water for cooking and drinking only, baths reduced to once weekly with shared water. Emma, resilient as children often are, adapted quickly. She helped haul smaller buckets, fed the chickens their meager rations, and never complained when dinner was beans again. But Sarah saw how the child watched Cole's increasingly haggard face with worry. One morning, Cole found Sarah in the barn, pitchfork in hand, mucking out stalls. "What the hell are you doing?" She didn't pause in her work. "What needs doing? You were out checking the range. These stalls won't clean themselves. This isn't women's work. Work is work." She hefted a forkful of soiled straw. "My father raised horses. I've mucked plenty of stalls." He watched her work with efficient movements. No wasted effort despite her smaller frame. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why stay? Why do this?" She paused then, leaning on the pitchfork. "Because 2 years ago, when my husband died, people told me I couldn't manage alone. Told me to give Emma to relatives and find work in a factory. Instead, I kept us together, kept us moving. We've slept in barns, under wagons, in church basements, but we survived." She looked at him directly. "You gave us a real home. I won't abandon it or you when times get hard." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding deeper than words. Cole nodded slowly and picked up another pitchfork. They worked side by side through the morning, and when Emma brought them water at midday, she found them both sweaty and covered in sawdust, sharing comfortable silence. As February wore into March, the situation worsened. Dead cattle began appearing on the range, victims of thirst and weakness. Wolves, emboldened by the drought, crept closer to the ranch. Cole spent nights in the barn, rifle across his knees, protecting what remained of his herd. One such night, Sarah woke to the sound of gunfire. She grabbed the old shotgun Cole had taught her to use and checked that Emma was safe before creeping to the window. In the moonlight, she saw Cole by the barn, fending off a pack of wolves trying to break through to the cattle. Without thinking, she ran outside, shotgun ready. A wolf had circled behind Cole, creeping through his blind spot. Sarah raised the gun and fired. The blast knocked her backward, but the wolf fled yelping into the darkness. Cole spun around, eyes wide. "Damn it, Sarah, get back inside." "Not until they're gone," she said, reloading with trembling hands. They stood back to back, watching the shadows until the pack finally melted away. Only then did Cole lower his rifle, turning to face her. "That was foolish," he said, but his voice shook slightly. "You could have been killed. So could you." She was suddenly aware of how close they stood, both breathing hard from adrenaline. "We protect what's ours, remember?" He raised a hand as if to touch her face, then let it fall. "Sarah, Mama?" Emma's voice from the doorway broke the spell. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, sweet pea," Sarah called, stepping away from Cole. "Go back to bed." The next morning brought a new crisis. The river, their last source of water, had stopped flowing entirely. Only stagnant pools remained, already growing foul. Cole stared at the dry riverbed, shoulders slumped in defeat. "That's it then. It's over." "No." Sarah's voice was fierce. "We'll haul water from the pools, boil it clean. We'll dig in the low spots, find where water might gather. We'll what?" He rounded on her. Months of stress finally boiling over. "Work miracles? Make it rain? Face it. Sarah, I've failed. Failed the ranch. Failed Margaret's memory. Failed you and Emma. You haven't failed anyone. Sarah shot back. You've fought every day to keep this place alive. That's not failure. That's courage. Courage, he laughed bitterly. Courage would be admitting when you're beaten. Courage would be sending you somewhere safe instead of keeping you here out of selfishness. Selfishness. You think I don't know why I want you to stay? The words poured out unchecked. You think I don't lie awake knowing I should send you away, but can't bear the thought of this place without you in it? Without Emma's laughter? Without... He stopped abruptly, breathing hard. Sarah stepped closer. Without what, Cole? Without you, he said roughly. God help me. I can't imagine this place without you. The admission hung between them like a physical thing. Sarah reached up, touching his face gently. His eyes closed at the contact. Then don't, she whispered. Don't imagine it. We're here. We're staying. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. The wanting was clear in his eyes. But then Emma's voice called from the house, and reality crashed back. They were employer and employee. He was still mourning his wife. She was a widow with a child to protect. The drought threatened everything. Cole stepped back. We should get back. There's work to do. But something fundamental had shifted. They worked together now not just as employer and employee, but as partners. When Cole suggested desperate measures, selling precious equipment, trading horses for water rights, Sarah was there to help decide. When Sarah proposed gathering the sparse desert plants she knew could supplement their diet, Cole helped her search. One evening, as they shared another meager meal of beans and preserved vegetables, Emma spoke up. Are we going to be okay? Cole and Sarah exchanged glances over her head. We're going to try our best, Sarah said carefully. That's not really an answer. Mama? Cole surprised them by reaching over to ruffle Emma's hair. Your mama's right, little one. We can't promise everything will be okay. But I can promise we won't give up without a fight. Emma nodded solemnly. I can help fight too. I'm not too little. No, Cole agreed, smiling slightly. You're not too little at all. That night, as Sarah kissed Emma's forehead in their nightly ritual, her daughter whispered, I love Mr. Cole, Mama, do you? Sarah's heart stopped. What makes you ask that, sweet pea? He looks at you the way Papa used to, and you look at him the same way. From the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. It's complicated. Emma, grown-ups always say that when they don't want to answer. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. Sleep now. We have another long day tomorrow. Outside their door, Cole stood frozen. He'd come to bring them extra blankets against the cold night and heard Emma's innocent question. He waited, heart pounding, but Sarah hadn't really answered. He retreated silently to his room, where Margaret's photograph watched from the nightstand. For the first time, he turned it face down, not from disrespect, but because he needed to think clearly, and he couldn't do that with her eyes on him. The drought would either break them or forge them into something stronger. Either way, Cole knew that whatever happened, his life was now inextricably bound with the widow and child who'd arrived seeking only work, but had given him so much more. The riders came at dawn on a Tuesday, their horses kicking up clouds of dust visible from miles away. Cole spotted them from the barn where he'd been rationing the last of the grain. 7 men, armed and moving with purpose. His blood ran cold. Sarah! He strode quickly to the house. Take Emma to the root cellar, now! She took one look at his face and didn't argue. How many? 7, led by Jake Morrison. He pulled his rifle from above the door, checking the ammunition. He's been wanting this land for years. Guess he figures the drought's weakened me enough. Morrison had a reputation for acquiring distressed properties through whatever means necessary. Some said he had connections to the railroad companies looking to expand. Others whispered darker things about missing homesteaders and convenient fires. Sarah grabbed Emma's hand, but paused at the cellar door. Cole, go! He barked, then softened. Please, keep her safe. From the cellar's darkness, Sarah and Emma heard the horses arrive, the creak of leather as men dismounted. Emma trembled against her mother, and Sarah held her close, straining to hear. Hartley, Morrison's voice carried clearly. Come on out. We need to talk business. Cole emerged, rifle held casually but ready. State your business from there. Morrison. Morrison was a big man gone to fat, his expensive clothes at odds with the rough company he kept. His smile reminded Cole of a snake. Now, is that any way to greet neighbors? We've come with a proposition. I'm not selling. You haven't heard my offer. Morrison dismounted, his men spreading out in a semicircle. Times are hard. Hartley, your cattle are dying, your water's gone. I'm offering you a way out. I said no. Morrison's smile widened. $500. Cash. More than this dried-up piece of hell is worth now. This land is worth more than money to me. Sentimental value? Morrison laughed. Can't eat sentiment. Can't water cattle with it either. His eyes glinted. Heard you got yourself a woman now. A widow with a kid? That true? Cole's grip tightened on the rifle. My employees are none of your concern. Employees. Morrison chuckled, and his men joined in. That what we're calling it? Well, a man with responsibilities should think practical. What happens to your employees when this ranch fails? When you can't protect them anymore? Is that a threat? Just facts. Morrison pulled out a leather wallet, counting bills. 500, final offer. Take it and leave peaceful, or don't, and things might get unpleasant. One of Morrison's men, a scarred gunman named Briggs, spoke up. Saw smoke from the Hendricks place yesterday. Boss, shame when fires start in dry weather like this. Cole's blood boiled. The Hendricks family had fled after their barn burned last month. Get off my land. Now. Morrison sighed dramatically. Have it your way. He mounted his horse. But drought's not the only danger out here. Hartley, accidents happen. Women and children, they're so vulnerable. Be a shame if... The rifle shot split the morning air. Morrison's hat flew off. A neat hole through the crown. Cole worked the lever, chambering another round. Next one goes through your head. Cole said calmly. Any of you come near this ranch again, I'll kill you. That's not a threat. Morrison, that's a promise. Morrison's face purpled with rage. But Briggs grabbed his arm. Not now, boss. He's got position. They retreated. Morrison shouting over his shoulder. You just signed your death warrant, Hartley. You hear me? You're done. Cole watched until they disappeared over the ridge, then sagged against the doorframe. His hands shook slightly as he lowered the rifle. Sarah emerged from the cellar, Emma clinging to her skirts. Are they gone? For now. He met her eyes. Pack your things. I'll take you to town tomorrow. Find passage on the stage to... No, damn it, Sarah, you heard them. They'll be back, and next time we'll be ready. She stepped closer. You think we're safer in town? Where Morrison has friends? On the road? Where we'd be easy prey? This isn't your fight. Yes, it is, her voice fierce. Emma and I have nowhere else. No family, no home, nothing but what we've built here. You think I'd let Morrison or anyone else take that? Emma tugged on Cole's sleeve. We won't leave you, Mr. Cole. We're family now, aren't we? The simple words hit him like a physical blow. He looked down at the child's trusting face, then at Sarah's determined one. We need to prepare. Sarah continued. How long before they come back? Cole forced himself to think tactically. Tonight, maybe tomorrow. They'll want to hit fast before I can get help. Then we'd better get ready. They spent the day in grim preparation. Cole showed Sarah how to load and shoot his spare pistol, positioned ammunition at strategic points. They barricaded windows, filled buckets with their precious water in case of fire. Sarah worked without complaint, steady and determined. As dusk fell, she put Emma in the root cellar with blankets and water. No matter what you hear, you stay here until Mama or Mr. Cole comes for you. Understand? Emma nodded, tears streaming. I'm scared. Mama. Sarah kissed her forehead tenderly. I know. Sweet pea, be brave for me. Night came slowly, each shadow potentially hiding danger. Cole and Sarah took positions at opposite windows, watching and waiting. The moon rose full and bright. Blessing and curse. They could see clearly, but so could their attackers. Sarah. Cole spoke softly in the darkness. I need to say something. In case, don't. Her voice was steady. Save it for after. When we've won. You have more faith than I do. No, I just have more to lose. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock. Then, at 2, they heard it, horses approaching fast. Cole counted muzzle flashes in the darkness. 8, maybe 9. They brought friends. The first shots shattered the windows. Sarah ducked. Glass showering over her. She returned fire, remembering Cole's instructions. Squeeze, don't jerk. Breathe between shots. Morrison's voice bellowed from outside. Last chance. Hartley. Give up the woman and the ranch, and you might live. Cole's answer was a shot that sent one of Morrison's men tumbling from his horse. The battle erupted in earnest. They came from 3 sides, trying to overwhelm. Cole moved between windows, rifle cracking steadily. Sarah held the east side, her pistol barking defiance, but they were outnumbered, and ammunition wouldn't last forever. Then disaster. A thrown torch landed on the porch. Flames began licking at the dry wood. The water buckets! Cole shouted. Sarah ran for them, but a bullet splintered the door frame inches from her head. The fire spread with terrifying speed in the drought-dried wood. We have to get out, Sarah yelled over the gunfire. They'll cut us down. Through the smoke, Sarah saw a figure creeping toward the barn. If they fired it too, the horses would die, their last chance of escape gone. Without thinking, she burst through the side door. The figure spun, raising his gun, but Sarah was already firing. He dropped, and she recognized him. Briggs, Morrison's right hand. A bullet caught her sleeve, spinning her around. Pain bloomed in her arm, hot and sharp. She stumbled back inside. Sarah! Cole caught her, saw the blood. Oh, God. It's not bad, though her face was white. Just a graze. The smoke thickened, flames consuming the front of the house. They retreated to the kitchen, Cole tying his bandana around her arm. I'm going out, he said. Draw their fire. You take Emma and run for the barn. Thunder's saddled. We're not leaving you. Damn it, woman. For once just... The kitchen door exploded inward. Morrison stood there, gun aimed, face twisted with rage and triumph. Touching scene. The grieving widower found love again. Too bad it ends here. Cole shoved Sarah behind him, but his rifle was across the room. Morrison's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Morrison looked down in shock at the spreading red stain on his chest. Behind him, Emma stood in the cellar doorway, Cole's spare pistol smoking in her small hands. You hurt my mama, she said simply. Morrison collapsed, his gun clattering away. The remaining attackers, seeing their leader fall and the house burning, lost heart. Cole heard horses galloping away, shouts of retreat. He knelt beside Emma, gently taking the gun. She collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm sorry. I knew I was supposed to stay hidden, but I heard Mama cry out and... Shh, little one, you saved us. He held her tight, looking over her head at Sarah. You saved us all. They fought the fire with desperate energy, the 3 of them forming a bucket brigade from the water barrels. Miraculously, they saved most of the house, though the front rooms were charred ruins. As dawn broke, they stood together surveying the damage. Morrison's body lay covered with a blanket. Others had fled. The ranch had survived, but barely. We should report this to the sheriff, Sarah said wearily. I'll ride to town later. Cole's arm was around her shoulders, supporting her. Do you need that arm looked at? It can wait. She leaned into him, too exhausted to maintain distance. We're alive. That's what matters. Emma stood between them, holding both their hands. The rising sun painted the world in shades of gold and red, and somewhere in the distance, clouds gathered on the horizon. Is it over? Emma asked. Cole squeezed her hand. This part is Morrison's men won't come back without him. What happens now? Sarah and Cole looked at each other over her head. So much unspoken, so much uncertain. But they were alive, together, and the ranch still stood. Now, Sarah said softly, we rebuild, together, as if in answer to their courage. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain. The rain that had threatened finally came 3 days after the attack. A gentle shower that barely dampened the ground, but carried the promise of more. As Cole worked to repair the damaged porch, he watched Sarah teaching Emma to plant seeds in the small garden plot they'd cleared. Push them down, just a finger deep, Sarah instructed. Her bandaged arm held carefully against her side. That's right, even if the drought comes back, we'll be ready this time. The sheriff had come and gone, taking Morrison's body and statements from all 3 of them. The surviving attackers had scattered to the winds. Word spread quickly through Cedar Falls about the widow and child who'd stood with Cole Hartley against overwhelming odds. The narrative in town began to shift, though not entirely in their favor. Cole? Sarah's voice drew him from his thoughts. Mrs. Patterson just pulled up in her buggy. He set down his hammer, frowning. The store owner rarely made social calls, especially not to his ranch. They met her at the gate, where she sat rigid in her buggy, mouth pursed like she'd bitten into something sour. Mr. Hartley, Mrs. McKenna. Her nod was barely civil. I've come on behalf of the Ladies' Moral Society. Have you now? Cole's voice held an edge. Recent events have forced us to reconsider the situation here. She glanced at Emma, who was listening with open curiosity. Perhaps the child should go inside. Emma stays, Sarah said firmly. Whatever you have to say can be said in front of her. Mrs. Patterson's lips thinned further. Very well. The society recognizes that you all showed considerable courage during the incident. However, this doesn't change the impropriety of your living arrangements. Impropriety. Cole stepped forward. This woman and her child risked their lives defending my home. There's nothing improper about loyalty and courage. Nevertheless, Mrs. Patterson continued, an unmarried woman living with an unmarried man, regardless of the circumstances, sets a poor example for our community. The society feels that for the sake of common decency, the society can go to hell. Cole interrupted. Cole. Sarah touched his arm gently, then addressed Mrs. Patterson. What exactly is the society proposing? That you find more suitable arrangements. The boarding house in town has openings, or perhaps it's time you moved on entirely. For the child's sake, you understand. Growing up in such circumstances, my daughter is growing up just fine. Sarah's voice could have cut glass. She's learning about hard work, loyalty, and standing up for what's right. If that offends your sensibilities, then perhaps it's your moral compass that needs adjusting, not our living situation. Mrs. Patterson's face flushed. How dare you? How dare you? Sarah stepped forward, and despite her smaller stature, Mrs. Patterson shrank back. Where was your moral society when we were hungry? Where were you when men came to burn us out? You sit in town, passing judgment on people trying to survive, while we're out here fighting for every day. Mama's right, Emma piped up suddenly. You're not very nice, Mrs. Patterson. My teacher says if you can't say something kind, you shouldn't say anything at all. The store owner's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Finally, she snapped. I can see you're beyond redemption, but mark my words, this arrangement will bring nothing but scandal and ruin. As her buggy rattled away, Cole found himself laughing. A real laugh, perhaps the first in years. Out of the mouths of babes, he said, ruffling Emma's hair. I'm sorry, Sarah began, but Cole stopped her. Don't apologize for speaking truth. That woman's been a bitter gossip for 20 years. He paused, studying Sarah's face. But she's not entirely wrong. This situation, it puts you and Emma at risk of more than just gossip. Sarah met his eyes steadily. What are you saying? I'm saying, He ran a hand through his hair, struggling for words. I'm saying you deserve better than to be the subject of town scandal. You deserve respectability, security, a proper home. We have a home, Emma said firmly. Here, with you. The simple declaration hung in the air. Sarah watched emotions chase across Cole's face. Longing, fear, hope, doubt. Emma, go check on the chickens, Sarah said softly. But Mama, go on, sweet pea. Once alone, Sarah turned to Cole. Is that what you want, for us to leave? No. The word came out rough, torn from somewhere deep. God help me, no, but what I want and what's right. Stop. She moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. Stop deciding what's right for everyone else. What do you want, Cole? He was silent for a long moment, then reached out to touch her face with work-roughened fingers. I want to wake up knowing you're here. I want to watch Emma grow up on this land. I want... His thumb traced her cheekbone. I want things I have no right to want. Why? She whispered. Why don't you have the right? Because I'm still broken. Sarah. Because I can't promise you won't be competing with a ghost. Because you deserve a whole man, not someone held together by habit and stubbornness. Sarah covered his hand with hers. We're all broken, Cole. The difference is whether we let it define us or whether we choose to heal. I don't know if I can. You already have. You let us in. You fought for us. You laughed again. She smiled softly. That's not a broken man. That's a man finding his way back. He wanted to kiss her then. She could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he leaned toward her. But something held him back, not Margaret's memory this time, but perhaps fear of his own heart. Emma's voice broke the moment. Mr. Cole, come quick. There's something wrong with Thunder. They found the horse down in his stall, breathing heavily. Cole knelt beside him, hands moving expertly over the animal's body. Colic, he said grimly. Must have gotten into some bad feed. For the next hours, they fought for the horse's life. Cole walked him when he could stand. Sarah mixed remedies from her knowledge of herbs, and Emma held the lantern and whispered encouragement. It was past midnight when Thunder finally passed the obstruction and stood steady on his feet again. Exhausted, they sat together in the straw, Emma asleep with her head in Sarah's lap. Thank you, Cole said quietly. I couldn't have managed alone. You're never alone anymore. Sarah replied, When will you understand that? He looked at her in the lamplight. This woman who'd entered his life seeking only work but had given so much more. I'm beginning to... The next morning brought unexpected visitors, the Hendricks family, returning to see their burned homestead. They stopped at Cole's ranch to water their horses and share news. Heard about your trouble with Morrison. Tom Hendricks said. Also heard you stood up to him. Gave folks courage. Some of us are thinking of rebuilding, fighting back against the land grabbers. Safety in numbers. Cole agreed. Morrison wasn't the only one eyeing distressed properties. My Martha wants to start a school. Mrs., Hendricks added, glancing at Emma. Proper education for the young ones? Would you be interested? Emma's face lit up, and Sarah felt a flutter of hope. A school meant community, meant putting down roots that went deeper than mere survival. As the Hendricks family departed, Cole stood beside Sarah watching their wagon disappear into the distance. Things are changing, he said. Yes, she agreed. The question is, are we changing with them? He was quiet for a moment, then asked, What did Emma mean yesterday? About us being family? Sarah's heart skipped. Children see things simply. To her, family is people who take care of each other, who stay together no matter what. And to you, she turned to face him fully. To me, family is choosing to build something together, even when it's hard, even when the world says you shouldn't. Sarah, his voice was rough with emotion. I need more time. I need to be sure I can give you and Emma everything you deserve. I'm not asking for everything, she said softly. Just truth. Just the chance to choose for ourselves. That evening, as Sarah performed the nightly ritual of kissing Emma good night, her daughter whispered, Is Mr. Cole going to be my new papa? Sarah's breath caught. Why do you ask that, sweet pea? Because he looks at you like Papa used to, and he teaches me things like Papa did. And when those bad men came, he protected us like Papa would have. It's complicated, Emma. You always say that. Emma sighed. But I think Mr. Cole just needs to know it's okay to love us. Maybe he thinks we'll leave like Mrs. Margaret did. Sometimes, Sarah thought, children saw clearest of all. Outside, Cole stood on the porch despite the cool evening air. The drought hadn't fully broken, but the occasional rains brought hope. His ranch would survive. The question was whether he could open his heart fully to the possibility of happiness that lived under his roof. In the distance, lightning flickered along the horizon, promising storms to come. But for tonight, there was peace. And in the house behind him, the quiet sounds of a family settling in for the night. Sounds he'd never thought to hear again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The town's judgment hadn't disappeared, merely shifted. There would be more fights ahead, more tests of their resolve. But tonight, Cole allowed himself to imagine a future where Emma called him Papa, where Sarah's last name matched his, where the empty corners of his heart filled again with laughter and love. It wasn't quite hope. Not yet. But it was the beginning of believing such hope might be possible. The attack came on a moonless night in late April. Cole woke to Thunder's frantic neighing and the acrid smell of smoke. He grabbed his rifle and boots, shouting as he ran. "Sarah, get Emma! They're burning the barn!" Flames already licked at the barn's walls. And in the dancing light, Cole saw them. 15 men, maybe 20, spreading out across the property. These weren't just Morrison's leftover thugs. These were professionals, hired guns brought in for a specific purpose. Sarah appeared with Emma, both fully dressed. They'd taken to sleeping ready for trouble since Morrison's attack. The root cellar? No, they'll expect that. Cole's mind raced. The old mine shaft, quarter-mile north. Take Thunder and... I'm not leaving you. You have to. He gripped her shoulders. Emma needs you. If something happens to me... Gunfire erupted, cutting him off. Windows shattered as bullets peppered the house. Cole shoved them toward the back door. Go, now! But it was too late. Men appeared from behind the smokehouse, cutting off their escape. Their leader stepped into the firelight, a thin man with dead eyes and matched pearl-handled revolvers. Jack Thornton! Cole spat the name like a curse. The gunman smiled coldly. Hello, Hartley? Been a long time. Sarah's mind raced. Thornton, she knew that name. The banker's brother. A killer who'd fled after murdering a judge in Denver. What was he doing here? Your brother hire you? Cole kept his rifle ready but knew they were outgunned. Among others, seems you've made enemies. Hartley, killing Morrison, refusing to sell... Thornton shrugged. Nothing personal, just business. Let the woman and child go. This is between us. Can't do that. Orders were specific, no witnesses. Emma whimpered, pressing against Sarah. The sound seemed to amuse Thornton. Though I might be persuaded to make exceptions, the woman's pretty enough, could fetch a good price in Mexico. Cole's finger tightened on the trigger, but Sarah spoke first, her voice steady despite her terror. You're Jack Thornton, the one who shot Judge Palmer? Thornton's eyes narrowed. What of it? My husband was Thomas McKenna, deputy marshal out of Kansas City. The name hit Thornton like a slap. His hand moved toward his gun. McKenna's woman. Well, this is interesting. Your husband cost me 2 good men in Dodge. And you cost me a husband, Sarah replied quietly. The barn roof collapsed in a shower of sparks, illuminating the tableau, gunmen surrounding them. Thornton's cold smile. Emma trembling between her mother and Cole. Touching reunion. Thornton drawled. But it changes nothing. Drop the rifle, Hartley. Cole hesitated, calculating odds. 20 men, open ground. Sarah and Emma to protect. No good options. I said drop it. Cole let the rifle fall. Immediately. 2 men grabbed him, forcing him to his knees. Others seized Sarah. though she fought them until one backhanded her across the face. "Mama," Emma broke free, running to her mother. "Feisty little thing," Thornton observed. "Like mother, like daughter." He drew one of his pearl-handled guns, aiming it casually at Cole. "Here's what happens now. You sign over the deed to this land, then maybe I let you die quick. Go to hell." Thornton's gun whipped across Cole's face, opening a gash along his cheek. "Wrong answer." "Stop!" Sarah struggled against her captors. "I'll get him to sign. Just don't hurt him anymore." "Sarah, no, please, Cole." Her eyes begged him to understand, to play along. "Think of Emma." Thornton holstered his gun. "Smart woman, bring them inside, and put out that damn fire before it spreads. Dead men can't sign deeds." They were herded into the house, guns trained on them from every angle. Thornton made himself comfortable in Cole's chair while his men ransacked the place, looking for the deed. "Found it, boss." One man emerged from Cole's study with the precious document. "Excellent." Thornton spread it on the table. "Now then, Hartley, sign it over to my brother's bank, and this ends clean." Cole's jaw set stubbornly. Sarah knelt beside him, speaking softly. "Cole, please, Emma needs us alive. The land isn't worth our lives." Her hand found his, squeezing gently. 3 short, 2 long, the signal they developed during the drought for danger at the well. She had a plan. "There's something you should know." Sarah addressed Thornton. "About Morrison's visit." "What about it?" "He didn't come alone the first time. There was a federal marshal with him, investigating land fraud. Morrison tried to bribe him." She met Thornton's gaze steadily. "The marshal's report is in the sheriff's safe in town. If anything happens to us, it names your brother specifically." It was a lie, but delivered with such conviction that Thornton paused. In that moment of uncertainty, several things happened at once. Emma, who'd been forgotten in the corner, grabbed the oil lamp from the table and threw it at the nearest gunman. Fire splashed across his shirt as the lamp shattered. Sarah drove her elbow into her captor's stomach. Grabbing for his gun, Cole surged to his feet, 2 years of grief and rage exploding into motion. The room erupted into chaos. Men shouted, guns fired, smoke and flames filled the air. Cole fought with desperate fury, using fists and furniture when bullets ran out. Sarah struggled for the gun, finally wrenching it free and firing point blank. Through the melee, Thornton remained calm, drawing both his guns with practiced ease. He aimed at Cole, who was grappling with 2 men, exposed and vulnerable. Sarah saw it happening as if in slow motion. Without thinking, she moved, putting herself between Thornton and Cole. The shot was impossibly loud. Sarah felt the impact, a hammer blow that spun her around. She heard Emma scream, saw Cole's face contort in horror, felt her knees buckle, but she didn't fall. The bullet had caught her shoulder, not her heart, and in Thornton's moment of satisfaction, believing his shot fatal, Cole broke free. What happened next would be debated in Cedar Falls for years. Some said Cole Hartley moved faster than any man could. Others claimed they saw the ghost of Margaret Hartley guiding his hand, but everyone agreed on the result. Cole's hand found Thornton's own fallen gun. In one fluid motion, he brought it up and fired. Thornton's eyes widened in surprise as the bullet found its mark, right between those cold, dead eyes. Their leader gone. The remaining gunmen lost heart. Some fled immediately. Others tried to fight but found themselves facing not just Cole, but Sarah, wounded but still standing, still fighting, and impossibly, reinforcements, the Hendricks family and other neighbors, drawn by the fire and gunshots, arriving with rifles and righteous anger. The battle turned into a rout. Thornton's hired killers scattered into the night, pursued by aroused homesteaders who'd had enough of land grabbers and intimidation. As dawn broke, the magnitude of their victory became clear. The barn was gone, but the house stood. Thornton lay dead. His threat ended. Most importantly, they were alive. Cole knelt beside Sarah, who sat propped against the wall while Mrs. Hendricks tended her shoulder. "Why?" he asked roughly. "Why did you step in front of me?" Sarah managed a weak smile. "Because I couldn't lose you, not when we've come so far. You foolish, brave, wonderful woman." His voice broke. "I thought, when I saw you fall, I'm tougher than I look," she whispered. Had to be, to love a stubborn rancher. The word hung between them. Love, finally spoken. Finally acknowledged. Emma appeared, tear-streaked but determined. "Is Mama going to be okay?" "Yes, sweet pea." Cole pulled her close. "Your Mama's going to be fine. She's the strongest person I know. Except for you," Emma said firmly. "You saved us." "We saved each other," Cole corrected. "That's what families do." Sarah's eyes filled with tears at the word. Family. After all the fighting, all the loss, they'd earned the right to claim it. Tom Hendricks approached, his face grim but satisfied. "Sheriff's on his way with a posse. Word spreading fast." "The banker's been arrested. Seems he was neck-deep in his brother's schemes. This might break their whole operation wide open." Cole nodded, but his attention remained on Sarah and Emma. The outside world could wait. Right now, all that mattered was that they were together, alive, and finally free of the shadows that had haunted them. "Cole," Sarah murmured, her good hand finding his. "About what I said." "I love you too," he said simply. "Both of you. I've been a fool, wasting time we could have had together. We have time now," she assured him. "All the time in the world." As the sun climbed higher, warming the battle-scarred ranch, neighbors pitched in to clean up and rebuild. The barn would rise again, stronger than before. The bullet holes would be patched, the scorch marks would fade, but some changes would remain. The way Cole's arm stayed protectively around Sarah. The way Emma called him Papa when she thought no one was listening. The way a house that had been merely a shelter became truly a home. Thornton had come to destroy them. Instead, he'd forged them into something unbreakable. A family tempered by fire, bound by choice, and stronger than any force that might try to tear them apart. Dawn broke golden and clear over the Wyoming plains, painting the world in shades of hope. 3 weeks had passed since Thornton's attack, and the ranch bore both scars and signs of renewal. The new barn rose from the ashes of the old, built with the help of neighbors who'd become friends. Sarah's shoulder had healed enough for light work, though Cole still fussed over her like a mother hen. They stood together on the porch, watching Emma feed the chickens in the yard. The child had bounced back with the resilience of youth, though she stayed closer to them now, as if afraid they might disappear. "The Hendricks family is coming for dinner," Sarah mentioned. "Martha wants to discuss the school plans." Cole nodded, his arm naturally finding its way around her waist. "Good. Emma needs proper schooling." "She needs more than that," Sarah said softly. "She needs stability, a real family. She has that. Does she?" Sarah turned to face him. "Cole, we've danced around this long enough. Emma calls you Papa when she thinks I'm not listening. The whole county thinks that we've already—" "I know what they think." His jaw tightened. "Maybe it's time we made honest folk out of them." Sarah's breath caught. "What are you saying?" Instead of answering, Cole went inside, returning with something clutched in his hand. He stood before her, this strong man who'd faced down gunmen and drought, looking suddenly uncertain. "This was Margaret's," he said, opening his palm to reveal a simple gold band. "I thought I'd never, but she would have wanted—" He took a breath. "Sarah McKenna, you brought life back to this place, to me. You and Emma gave me reason to fight again, to hope again. I'm not good with words, but I know I don't want to face another day without you beside me. Will you marry me?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Cole, Are you sure? I'm not asking you to forget Margaret." "I'll never forget her," he said firmly. "But I've learned there's room in a heart for more than one love. Margaret taught me how to love. You taught me how to live again." He managed a crooked smile. "Besides, Emma informed me yesterday that if I didn't marry you soon, She was going to start calling me Papa anyway and embarrass us both in church. Sarah laughed through her tears. That sounds like Emma. She looked at the ring, then at the man offering it. Yes, Cole. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then kissed her, their first real kiss. Full of promise and passion too long denied. When they broke apart, Emma stood in the doorway, beaming. Finally, she exclaimed. I thought I was going to have to lock you both in the root cellar until you figured it out. The wedding took place 2 weeks later, on a perfect May morning with wildflowers blooming across the prairie. The transformation in the community was remarkable. The same people who'd whispered behind their hands now came bearing gifts and good wishes. The defeat of Thornton and exposure of the banker's corruption had shifted the social winds. Sarah and Cole had become symbols of resilience, their love story proof that second chances were possible. Reverend Mills performed the ceremony in the ranch's front yard, beneath an arch of prairie roses that Emma and the Hendricks children had woven. Sarah wore her best dress, nothing fancy, but Cole thought she'd never looked more beautiful. Emma stood as witness, holding the rings and trying very hard not to bounce with excitement. Do you, Coleman Hartley, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. The words came strong and sure. Do you, Sarah McKenna, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. No hesitation, no doubt. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride. The kiss was interrupted by Emma throwing her arms around both of them. We're really a family now. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. Tables groaned under the weight of food brought by neighbors. Tom Hendricks played his fiddle while couples danced on the packed earth. Even Mrs. Patterson, her moral superiority somewhat deflated, managed a genuine smile and a wedding gift of new curtains. As the sun set, Cole and Sarah stood apart from the crowd, watching Emma play with the other children. She ran and laughed with abandon. No longer the too quiet child who'd arrived at the ranch months ago. No regrets? Sarah asked softly. Only one. Cole replied, that I waited so long to do this. She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. Margaret would be happy, I think, knowing you didn't stay alone. She would, he agreed. She always said I was too stubborn for my own good. Took a woman just as stubborn to break through. Excuse me? I'm not stubborn. I'm determined. Woman, you stood up to Drought, Gunman, and the entire Ladies' Moral Society. That's past determined and well into mule-headed territory. She swatted his arm playfully, then grew serious. Cole, the drought's broken. Thornton's gone. We're married. What happens now? He considered the question, looking out over the land that had seen so much struggle. Now we raise Emma, maybe give her brothers and sisters if we're blessed. We help the Hendricks build their school. We make this ranch what it should be, not just a place to survive, but a place to truly live. I like that plan, Sarah murmured, as if summoned by the mention of her name. Emma ran up, breathless and glowing. Mama, Papa, Mrs. Hendricks says I can be the first student in the new school, and she wants Mama to help teach sometimes because you know letters and numbers so well. That's wonderful. Sweet pea. Sarah smoothed her daughter's wild hair. And Papa, Mr. Hendricks says you should run for county commissioner. He says we need honest men in charge, not like that bad banker. Cole chuckled. One thing at a time. Little one. Let's get through planting season first. As the evening deepened, the celebration wound down. Neighbors headed home with promises to help with the spring planting. The Hendricks family was the last to leave, Martha pressing Sarah's hands warmly. I'm so happy for you, she said. You've all earned this joy. When they were finally alone, the three of them sat on the porch steps, Emma between them, watching the stars emerge. The night was warm, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. Tell me a story, Papa, Emma requested. Yawning, Cole smiled. What kind of story? About a brave rancher and a lady and a little girl who became a family. Sarah and Cole exchanged glances over her head. Well, Cole began. Once upon a time, there was a lonely rancher who thought his heart had turned to stone. As he wove their own story into a fairy tale, Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming rightness of this moment. The woman who'd arrived at this ranch gate desperate and afraid had found more than work or shelter. She'd found love, family, home. Emma fell asleep against Cole's shoulder before the story ended. He carried her inside, Sarah following, and together they tucked her into bed. Sarah kissed her forehead in their nightly ritual, but this time Cole bent and did the same. "Sweet dreams, little one," he whispered. They stood together, watching their daughter, theirs now in every way that mattered, sleep peacefully. Through the window, the ranch stretched out under starlight. Tomorrow would bring work aplenty. There were crops to plant, cattle to tend, a life to build together. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. "I love you, Mrs. Hartley," Cole said softly. "And I love you, Mr. Hartley." Sarah replied. They left Emma's door cracked open. She still had occasional nightmares from the attacks, and walked hand in hand to their own room. On the dresser, Margaret's photograph still stood, but now it was joined by a second frame, a sketch the traveling artist had made at the wedding, showing all three of them together, two loves, one life, moving forward together. Outside, a soft rain began to fall, blessing the thirsty earth. The drought was truly over, in more ways than one. The ranch that had nearly died was reborn. The hearts that had been broken were healed, and in a small room off the kitchen, a little girl smiled in her sleep, safe in the knowledge that she was home. The lonely rancher had watched a widow kiss her daughter with tender love, and in that moment, though he hadn't known it then, his life had begun again. Now, months later, they were no longer three separate souls struggling to survive, but a family forged by choice, tested by fire, and bound by love. The West was still wild, still hard, still demanding, but together, they would meet whatever came. Together, they would build something lasting on this unforgiving land, a legacy of love, courage, and the faith that broken hearts can indeed be made whole again. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting gentle shadows. Rain pattered on the roof like a lullaby. And in the Hartley ranch house, three souls who'd found each other against all odds settled into sleep, wrapped in the warmth of home, family, and the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Sarah, Cole, and little Emma on their journey from strangers to family. If you're listening to this tale, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more heartwarming stories of love, courage, and adventure in the American frontier. What did you think of Cole and Sarah's romance? Did Emma steal your heart like she stole mine? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love connecting with fellow Western romance fans. Until our next adventure, keep riding toward your own sunset.